What's up, YouTube? In today's video, we're going to be checking out the top 10 worst years in human history. You know, a bunch of this shit is just going to be like prehistoric era stuff, like living with dinosaurs. Oh, all those old animals and stuff that used to live on the earth. You can see all those videos of like they're like spiders, but they're like 10 feet tall and big ass snakes and shit, and how they've like devolved down. But I guess we'll see the worst years that have been in human history. But before that, make sure to hit that like button, that subscribe button, and turn post notifications on for turn post notifications on for more videos like this. And let's hop into this video.
Humans have been around for roughly 200,000 years, and honestly, most of that time was spent dying in pools of our own diarrhea. So when you think of the worst years in human history, it's basically all of them. But that would be a boring video.
Yeah.
So let's be prisoners of the moment and allow recency
like
bias to cloud our analysis as we rank the top 10 worst years to be alive in human history. Number 10, 1918. This year kicks off with a little something called the Spanish flu. Surprisingly, this flu wasn't actually from Spain, but it was still no bueno.
Are they going to do the Black Plague?
Numbers for the death toll are kind of hard to pin down, but estimates range from 20 to 50 million human deaths globally. The Spanish flu was particularly deadly for two reasons. One, it was a brand new strain of the flu, and two, the conditions of the Great War made it so much easier for the disease to spread.
Yeah, like if you added like, I'm just had to think of this, like just like a cold to some town in like the 1600s, they would all die. That's what you got to think about. Modern medicine has evolved so much, and if you were to put just a common cold for us now in like the 1600s, a lot of people would die from it, and that's really what this was. I mean, this would be like a
soldiers returning home brought the flu with them, infecting people in remote areas who had no immunity to the virus. What was extra special about the Spanish flu was that it was unusually deadly for young adults compared to other flu viruses of the time, leading to a significantly higher death toll. This disease was terrifying for doctors, not just because of how quickly it spread or how quickly their patients died, but the process of how people died from it. Heliotrope cyanosis was a symptom of the Spanish flu, where a patient's skin would slowly turn purple as their lungs filled with fluid, preventing them from getting enough oxygen into their bloodstream. The blue/purple color would start in their lips and fingers, but eventually spread across their whole body as they neared death.
Oh, and their entire body has turned purple? Oh my god.
Their entire body would then quickly turn from purple to black. Truly horrific stuff. To make matters worse, 1918 was also the final year of World War I, which saw another 5 million global casualties and made most of Europe no fun.
Damn!
Also in this year, you had the Russian Revolution going on, which ended the House of Romanov for good with the assassination of Nicholas II and his family this year. This revolution allowed Vladimir Lenin to take power, where he established a totalitarian dictatorship that oversaw the mass killing of political dissidents. The revolution was marked by brutal civil war and famine, which killed millions more. And finally, the Treaty of Versailles was being drafted, which, while not initially terrible, put Germany in a super bad mood that had some pretty major downstream consequences. But more on that later. Number 9, 1492. We all know in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But by doing that, Columbus also opened up a portal to hell for nearly everyone who is currently living in the Americas. Nearly every indigenous person that came in contact with a European settler was either killed by a disease, killed in the slave trade, killed in war, or died of a broken heart. And while it certainly didn't all happen in one year,
sicknesses from these different areas that would just kill
ended up
the
killing
entire nation.
90% of the indigenous population. Diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza decimated communities that had no immunity to these foreign illnesses. I guess one could argue that the events of 1492 had positive effects on much of humanity, leading to the age of exploration and the eventual globalization of trade and culture that brought us things like pizza and chocolate. However, the near extinction of an entire continent civilization does put it on our list. Number 8, 2008. This is probably the height of recency bias, but
yeah, when everybody thought the world was ending.
Who cares? It sucked.
What a stupid
2008
thing.
was the year the entire
We're relieving
world realized
people
that
from
rich people just basically make up how much money there is. And for a number of reasons too complicated to go
that's
into
a 2012 I'm thinking
something
of.
called Lehman Brothers went out of business.
What's 2008?
The entire global economy collapsed.
Yeah, this
Stock
is the
markets around the world crashed.
That's what it was.
The American auto industry
I bet the
nearly went belly
2012
up,
will be on
and
here
the cost of food and gas went through the roof. It was the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression, causing millions of Americans to lose their jobs and homes. Also, if you've ever wondered, why do houses cost so much these days? Well, in the aftermath of the 2008 mortgage crisis, new home construction basically stopped for about 10 years because nobody could get a loan. And since there wasn't a 10-year hiatus on unprotected sex, we now have way too many people and way too few houses. So thanks again 2008 for still ruining all of our lives. What? China and Australia's economy actually grew during the Great Recession?
Yeah, well,
What do you mean
we are
America
in
isn't the center of
China.
the Number 7, 73,000 BC. Okay, so we're a little loosey-goosey on the exact year, but trust me, whenever it was bad.
Yep.
Rewind Earth's clock 70 or so millennia, and you'll witness what's known as a supervolcano eruption. This particular event is known as the Toba Catastrophe and is probably the thing Indonesia is second most famous for after Komodo dragons. This
I didn't
eruption
even know they
set
were
off
famous
a
for that.
10-year volcanic winter that nearly eliminated the entire human species. The Toba eruption released so much volcanic ash into the atmosphere that it blocked sunlight, leading to a drastic drop in global temperatures. The few survivors faced harsh conditions, with scarce food and resources, struggling
Poor
to
little
maintain their
guys. They're
communities.
gonna freeze to death.
The entire human population left on Earth was somewhere between 3,000 and 10,000 people,
Damn.
or roughly the size of Brandon, South Dakota. You've never heard of Brandon, South Dakota? Okay, Madison Square Garden can hold around 20,000 people, so the entire population left on Earth after that eruption could fit in MSG
Jeez.
twice. This phenomenon is known
That's
as a
crazy.
genetic bottleneck, and is also why we're all kind of related. Number 6, 1929. The Roaring Twenties came to an abrupt end in 1929 when the U.S. stock market crashed, setting off, stop me if you've heard this before, a global economic
Well,
collapse.
I guess you could say this is
The Great
US
Depression that followed
collapse.
was a decade-long economic disaster that affected almost every country in the world.
Never mind.
Mental health
This is
was at
me.
an all-time low immediately
Aw,
following the
so you're
market
little
crash.
sad guys. Real sad,
Self-deletion
walking
rates
on the
were so
street.
high that some hotel operators in New York City would ask guests if they needed a room for sleeping or jumping out of. That's real. In the US, 1 in 4 people became unemployed, and wages for the remaining workforce were basically cut in half. Bread lines and soup kitchens became a common sight, and many people lost their homes and savings. One farmer of the day knew he couldn't afford to feed his sheep, so he slit their throats and threw them down a canyon instead of letting them starve. It's like, what? They don't like sheep? The events of 1929
Oh
set
my
off a decade
God.
of economic
He's cut his
hardship
head
that
off?
culminated in
Threw it
Earth's
down?
favorite pastime, World
Because they were
War.
hungry.
Number 5, 1601. If you take one thing away from this video, it should be that volcanoes are bad. So bad,
Really?
in fact, that one volcano in Peru basically turned the lights off for the whole planet. The eruption of Huayna Patina in 1600 was one of the largest volcanic events in recorded history.
Was this the one
vast
that like
amounts
put the
of ash into
smog
the
smoke
atmosphere.
shit like
The summer
everywhere?
of 1601 was known as the summer with no
Yeah.
sunshine. Sunlight levels dramatically decreased everywhere in the world, causing mass famine, but nowhere more so than Russia. The lack of sunlight led to crop failures and livestock death. A third of the Russian population starving to death in the 2 years following the eruption. No sunshine also meant it was extremely cold, so to keep warm, many in the region turned to killing any animal with fur they
Ooh.
could find, not just for food, but also to create clothing and blankets. Accounts from the time describe people so desperate for food that they ate grass, their pets, and each
Their
other.
pets?
Which means all of us are just one
Jeez.
cloudy summer away from
They're desperate.
cannibalism. Number 4, 1942. Not much to see here, just worldwide violence and genocide resulting in millions of deaths. At the tail end of 1941,
Yeah, you could
Japan
say
made
that
a
for a bunch of
monumental
these.
strategic error
Bunch of
and,
these
not
years.
so elegantly, insisted that the U.S. become heavily involved in World War II. This essentially turned America into a death factory, where every able-bodied human was either making stuff that killed people or just killing people. The war effort mobilized
Yeah.
entire populations,
How much did that
leading
end
to the
up being
development
that
of new
died?
weapons and technologies, including the Manhattan Project, which would cause all kinds of problems for future humans. Meanwhile, soldiers and civilians in Russia and China were dying by the thousands every day. The brutal fighting on the
Sheesh.
Eastern Front and the Pacific Theater claimed millions of lives. Nazi Germany continued its war crimes and genocide, so not great. Number 3, 1943. Remember 1942? Like that, but again.
Uh-oh.
1943 saw some of the deadliest battles
So
of
there
World
are
War II.
deaths.
The
Now
Battle
there
of
are more
Stalingrad,
deaths.
one of the bloodiest battles in history, ended in early 1943 with the defeat of the German army.
Running like
This marked
that.
a turning point in the war, but came at a staggering cost of over 2 million casualties. In the Pacific, the Battle of Guadalcanal and the continued island hopping campaign resulted in massive losses on both sides. And Nazi Germany continued doing Nazi Germany things. So again, a horrible time. Number 2, 1347. Welcome to medieval times. You really can't say anything about the mid-1300s that doesn't involve the bubonic plague. In 1347, the Black Death began ravishing most of Eurasia and parts of North Africa. Within a few years, the plague killed
Knew they were
roughly
gonna talk
a third
about
of
it
Europe,
soon.
which probably put a pretty big dent into the
It killed like
cappuccino and
half
scarf
the earth,
industries.
didn't it?
The plague was caused by a bacterium in the fleas of rats, and rats were basically the podcasts of the 1300s. Completely unwanted, but absolutely everyone had them. Death from the bubonic plague was swift, but painful. An infected person would develop horribly swollen lymph nodes, often accompanied by fever and diarrhea, and would usually be dead in under a week.
That shouldn't be the
Medicine of the time was primitive, to say the least. A popular cure for the plague
Oh, is that
included
where they
taking
had
a
the
healthy
crowheads
chicken,
for?
plucking its back and bottom clean, and then strapping it to the patient's open sores. The idea was if the chicken became ill, it was helping to pull out the disease from the patient. Okay, let's check your chicken today. Oh, awesome, it's almost dead. You're doing great.
Yeah, then it does
This would be
die.
repeated until the patient or the chicken died, often both in many cases. Chickens weren't the only animal rubbed on boils. Plague doctors
Why did so
also
many
tried
people die
rubbing
from
cut-up
diseases
pieces of
back then?
snakes on
This
them
is
as well.
why. Because their
See,
medicine was
snakes were
shit.
considered evil, and so was the plague.
Like,
So the idea
when
was
your
that if evil
choice
things, like
of
other
fixing
evil
a
things,
problem
putting the
is
snake on a
rubbing
boil would
chicken
trick the
or
plague
that,
into following the snake and leave the
that's
patient's body.
probably why a lot of people
Another
died.
cutting-edge cure for the Black Death was eating crushed emeralds. People who couldn't
What?
afford emeralds would drink arsenic or mercury instead, which
What?
probably was just a little less effective than the chicken and the snake. All the
Arsenic?
anguish from this pandemic began to pull society apart at the seams.
Jeez.
Many people
Bro.
took the chaos of the situation as an opportunity to steal from the sick and weak. Needless to say, people were so scared to help one another, many were left to die alone in misery. It took centuries for Europe
Aw.
and other parts of the world to recover from the mass destruction of the Black Death.
How did
Number
it solve
1,
it?
536. This is essentially a greatest hits of all the worst moments from human history. Things kick off with our old friend the supervolcano, which sent
Ooh.
a cloud of volcanic ash over the entire northern hemisphere. This left most of the world in virtual darkness for 18 months, brought the global temperature down 30 degrees, and caused, say it with me, widespread famine. Things were extra bad in
I
China,
was not gonna say
where
that
dust
with you.
rained to the ground by the handful, and 70 to 80% of the population died. The lack of sunlight led to crop failures, starvation, and social unrest. But wait, there's
Uh-oh.
more! On top of extreme food scarcity, a plague broke out in Europe. People
Oh,
would
and a
break out in
plague.
pus-filled boils before perishing by the thousands,
So much
making disposal of the bodies
sicknesses.
impossible.
Oh.
Bodies were heaped in piles or thrown into the sea, only to wash
Jeez.
back up days later. And the southern hemisphere wasn't spared. To make things worse, 536 had a powerful El Nino that warmed the waters off the South American coast, killing fish stocks, flooding the coasts, and you guessed it, causing widespread famine. So yeah, 536 kind of runs away with it.
What was that? Why did it say honey naked? What? What did I just read?
Eve to me is basically
What?
freedom.
But hope you guys enjoyed that video. I mean, this is crazy. There was so much worse here. I'm thinking about it. Like any prehistoric era where there's just, like I was saying, any prehistoric era could have. I mean, theories are all really bad, but any war, sickness was just a lot, and they didn't have any good medicine, so they couldn't fix it. So bad years. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to click on one of these two videos up here, and I'll see you guys in the next one.